Okay, good morning, everyone. And I think we can begin already. And of course, we will keep admitting people as they come in. So as I said before, please keep your microphone closed as much as possible. Sorry, I see that there was one speaker with the microphone open. So welcome to the EUSALP Embedding Workshop. This is an event that is organized by the Italian Presidency of 2022 for the EU strategy for the Alpine region, which is the autonomous province of Trento and the autonomous province of Bolzano. So I will briefly introduce the agenda for today's meeting, and then we will go on onto the content, let's say, of this workshop. So we will have an opening session from the Italian Presidency and the DG REGIO colleagues. Then we will have a keynote speaker session. After that, we will divide into parallel working sessions, and the idea is to work onto the three established financial dialogue networks in the EUSAP strategy, which is digital technology, energy transition, and sustainable mobility. These three parallel sessions will have speakers from the EUSAP action groups, as well as experts and managing authorities. The idea is to discuss about possible solutions and possible ideas to implement the activities that the action groups will present. After that, we'll come back to the plenary session again. We will have a little bit of a brief of what has been discussed in the parallel sessions and what are, let's say, the main findings or the key elements that were raised by the speakers. And then we will have a Q&A session with all the participants. So you will have, of course, the opportunity to intervene, and please feel free, meanwhile, to write in the chat. You should have the option to write to us hosts and the co-host. So if you have any question, please feel free to write it, and we will take that into consideration. So I will pass on the word already to the first speakers for the opening session. I will leave the floor to Marco Doglia from the Italian Department for Cohesion Policies, who will introduce a little bit why the Italian Presidency organized this workshop and why, what is its overall aim. So please, Marco.
Thank you, Stefano. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to this EUSALP Embedding Workshop organized by, as Stefano was saying, by the 2022 EUSALP Italian Presidency. First, I would like to express my appreciation to all the speakers for their time and their interest in the EUSALP embedding process, of course. Special thanks go to the European Commission and to the managing authorities, to the representatives responsible for funding programs, who I am sure will give their significant contribution to the discussion. Let me also thank of course, the Presidency, the Bolzano and Trento autonomous provinces in their capacity as a 2022 Presidency of EUSALP, and of course, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Last but not least, the technical superstructure, which made a huge effort and gave us a tremendous help in organizing this meeting. And of course, all of you that are attending to the meeting and for your kind participation. I hope that this event will represent a further step towards a more effective cooperation on strategic priorities within the Alps. It deals with a very difficult but necessary process of embedding. The European of the embedding, of course, of the European Union strategy for the Alpine region in rare life policies for the Alpine territories. Just to start, I would like to remind ourselves the potential and the size of EUSALP. Very sorry, but EUSALP is a policy framework intended to address and find common solutions to common problems, and to make the best use of common possibilities for 80 million people living in 48 regions of 7 countries. And all these people have something in common. They are all linked by the unique environment of the Alps. Of course, in this scenario, the process of embedding essentially aims at facilitating the connection between EUSALP priorities and objectives with real-life policies and available funding opportunities. Does this by enhancing dialogue and exchange of information between action groups members and bodies responsible for managing funding programs. We have an occasion now, because we have a good basis for embedding process that has been provided by the EU Common Provision Regulation for 2021-2027. Embedding was already present in the previous programmation, but now it is strengthened because the EU Common Provision Regulation strengthens the link of transnational programs with the strategic cooperation framework of EU macroregions by making it compulsory. We are now in some way obliged to do embedding. Transnational programs are in fact in the forefront of contributing to the embedding of the strategies, since transnational programs with the same geography as EU macroregional strategies, therefore including the Alpine Space Program with respect to EUSALP, must contribute to their priorities and objectives with at least 80% of their financial allocation. Moreover, these same geography transnational programs also support macro-regional strategies governance and enhance the institutional capacity of authorities and stakeholders to implement the strategies. I am pleased to say that this is precisely what is happening these days with the Alpine Space Program, which from 2023 is preparing to support the operations of the important new established EUSALP technical support structure, the TSS. After the bridge, as you know, after the bridge provided by the European Commission for 2022. We needed to. Moreover, the EU Common Provision Regulation also requires mainstream programs to take into account macro-regional strategies. And the same applies to Interreg programs according to the Interreg regulation. This is a great occasion to work all together to find synergies between all those fields of cooperation. Against this backdrop, while EUSALP has been developing as a new policy framework for the Alpine region since its inception in 2015, the need to embed the strategy into effective policies and funding has been fully supported by the European Commission and has increasingly emerged as a must for the strategy. In order to be translated into action, the embedding of the strategy has therefore entered as a fundamental issue, the agenda of all annual rotating presidencies, including, and perhaps in particular I would say, the latest French and Italian presidencies. This process has been grounded so far, particularly on meetings dedicated to the embedding of EUSALP organized by the European Commission with the macro-regional strategies weeks on the establishment of financial dialogue networks as operational tools to identify thematic priorities and match projects and funds, on conference organized by action groups in the specific field of interest, of course, and on the inclusion, to the extent possible, of course, of EUSALP priorities within mainstream programs, notably the ERDF regional programs. We have already made, as a department, a big effort to give support to regional authorities and to Center One in embedding. And today's meeting is therefore part of an ongoing, difficult, but inevitable effort for all the 4 macro-regional strategies. This difficult effort represents an ever greater challenge for the youngest strategy of all, EUSALP, which could suffer from teething problems, I would say, more than others, because it's a new strategy, it's a young strategy, it's a young strategy. So a special challenge is represented by the inclusion of EUSALP in the mainstream programs. On this point, I can bring the testimony of Italy. The regional programs of the Alpine area have tried to conform to the recommendation of the EU, albeit with varying degree of involvement, of course, not all the same. And this is something we are coping with. We are trying to find a common way of approaching to embedding. It's extremely difficult, I know, and we are moving toward the best practice and things like this. However, I consider this as a positive element along the path to achieve the embedding process goals. The Italian Department of Cohesion Policies and the Agency for Territorial Cohesion are also running a specific project to support the managing authorities in the embedding process through operative tools, guidelines, as I was saying, and thematic workshops. We are working very hard on the embedding process. We really believe in it. On the other hand, the deployment of a full embedding process with the adoption of valuable EUSALP-driven solution in both mainstream and Interreg programs, not to mention the funds directly managed by the European Commission, requires a cultural change. There is no other way, I think. This is very important. Capacity building is key to success, and all involved stakeholders must be part of a wide learning community. As a matter of fact, the truth is that macro-regional strategies are relatively new to all of us, and all we need to learn how to implement them and find out a way to implement them both in a technical and political way. This process must involve, in particular, I think, the national coordinators and the thematic coordinators of the action groups, not to forget the the coordinators of the financial dialogue networks, as well, of course, the managing authorities and other bodies responsible for managing funds. Just, of course, to name the most important ones, the most relevant ones. I would like to recall the role of the financial dialogue networks, because this brings me to the specific vision that drove the organization of the meeting we are attending today. Since we are approaching a more operational phase of the process, we consider this workshop as a strategic moment of discussion to facilitate this transition, providing a concrete working session showcasing instruments and best practice which could be used by the bodies in charge of managing the funds. This is the aim of today's workshop. This workshop has a special focus on the 3 financial dialogue networks in operation: energy transition, sustainable mobility, and digital technology, with a parallel session led by the FDN coordinators, and very, very qualified and stimulating audience and participants. In fact, the financial dialogue networks have been established by the executive board of EUSALP, precisely to facilitate the connection between EUSALP activities and available funding by enhancing the dialogue and exchange of information between members and managing authorities, between member managing authorities and intermediary bodies and also stakeholders in general, of course. The work of the financial dialogue network is an ongoing multi-step process. Some important results, as I was saying, have already been achieved. For example, I refer to the labeling of projects within the work of the Action Group 4 and the Sustainable Mobility FDN. The green hydrogen concept promoted by Action Groups 9 and 2, and the energy transition FDN. The smart villages approach promoted by the Action Group 5, and the digital technology FDN, of course. To conclude, the embedding of EUSALP is clearly an evolving process open to developments. Further indication will come from the General Assembly of the 24th of November in Trento and from the next presidencies, starting with the Swiss one in 2023, that will mark the return of Swiss Confederation to the political level of the strategy. Let me take this opportunity to say that the Italian presidency has worked hard on this comeback, and that I am very, very pleased to give the warmest welcome back to Switzerland. We are in a situation in which, paradoxically, the great work done by the action groups since 2016 has produced a wealth of policy recommendation, which is good, but also has a negative implication, because this abundance of ideas needs to be filtered in some way and streamlined to be handled as a political tool in an effective way, as to become fully usable also for the politicians to endorse. This is a challenge for EUSALP, to focus more on some cross-cutting topics that have the potential to be of interest to as many territories as possible, all across, of course, the European region, and that require to be tackled at a transnational level. It is in fact important to underline that one of the main thrusts of the Italian presidency since its inaugural executive board, sorry for the telephone, board of Bolzano in January 2022 has been in the direction of simplifying the priorities of EUSALP. If we go back to the REGIO used in January, Action Group and rotating presidencies have been planting many trees that are, of course, the priorities. But now there are so many trees that they have become a forest, and it is difficult to discern a clear direction for the strategy. The best way ahead is, of course, that of careful liaison on some kind of deforestation of the EUSALP priorities. I don't know if I can talk about deforestation in the Alps, but okay. It's not my image. And I would like to record that, in fact, I would like to record that this metaphor was used by someone more important than me, and also by Thomas Seger, the director of SAB, the Swiss Center for Mountain Regions, in the useful policy recommendations formulated in June of this year, and which were also discussed at the executive board. In this perspective, today's work represents a further step in the discussion of the most important issues for EUSALP and of the points of contact with the regional interregional mainstream programs and with the direct funding sources of the European Commission. And it will provide, I think, a very useful input for the November annual forum and the General Assembly in Trento. This workshop is also an opportunity to debate and share good practice, as I was saying. I hope that this process will allow to identify the possible flagship initiative and projects that will carry a clear EUSALP brand. This would greatly reinforce the mainstreaming and visibility of the strategy for the benefit of the EUSALP authorities, as is doing with the EUSALP. Once again, I would like to thank all the participants, the speakers, and the organizers of this workshop. The embedding, I must recall, is a crucial element to achieve a more effective strategy, close and beneficial for, as I said, more than 80 million people along the Alps. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I will now leave the floor to Emma Mitrotta from the Autonomous Province of Trento for a few words of introduction, and then we'll move on to Giacomo Luciani from the DG REGIO of the European Commission. So please, Emma.
Thank you, Stefano. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So good morning. Thanks to Mr. Doglia for his welcoming words. As Stefano said, I'm Emma Mitrotta. I work for the Autonomous Province of Trento, which together with the Autonomous Province of Bolzano-Bozen is chairing the EUSALP Presidency this year. Here I'm working as EUSALP policy officer, and I'm part of the EUSALP presidency team. So today I'm intervening on behalf of the Italian Presidency to welcome you to this workshop and highlight the importance of embedding for our presidency. We chose to include embedding among our priorities in continuity with the efforts initiated under the French presidency, because it's of strategic importance for the development of the strategy, as we heard, since the alignment between funding availability and needs can boost the delivery of results on the ground. So in EUSALP, we are pursuing this alignment of interest thematically through the financial dialogue networks. As we heard, we already had 3 financial dialogue networks established on specific topics, and this FDN model is very flexible, so it could be adapted to any relevant topic that would become a priority for EUSALP in the future. This year, we aimed at supporting the work of the 3 financial dialogue networks by organizing 2 dedicated events. A first workshop was held during the Macro-Regional Strategy Week in March, and it gathered the financial dialogue network leaders to facilitate an exchange in terms of the results achieved during their work and the future objectives, as well as discuss their experiences from the practical contact with authorities in charge of managing funding opportunities. Today, we aim to build on the results of that and lesson learned in that meeting, and we wish to move on towards the second phase of the embedding workshop by focusing on how to implement EUSALP priorities. And to this end, we need to start filling the knowledge gap relating to available funding opportunities, and in these we will benefit also from the valuable contribution of our colleague from DG REGIO. And we aim also at strengthening contacts between the financial dialogue networks leaders and AG members and the authorities managing funding opportunities through the parallel session. We see the second meeting also as a first step towards creating a common framework and methodology for the work of the 3 financial dialogue networks, which now benefit from the support of the recently established EUSALP technical support structure. Our TSS, our colleagues from the technical support structure have been fundamental for the organization of today's event, and in particular Stefano Sala, which is chairing, as moderating the event. So they are all actively involved in it, and I thank you all a lot for your efforts. The organization of this workshop has also benefited from the guidelines and fruitful collaboration with our Italian Department for Cohesion Policies that fostered the embedding of the EUSALP priorities during the programming phase, and as national coordinators in EUSALP is advising the actors in our strategy on how to make our priorities more visible to funding programs and more concrete. So before leaving the floor to the EU Commission, I thank the speakers who accepted our invitation and all the participants for joining this workshop again, and I wish you all a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Emma, and also for the words. And I will now pass the floor to Giacomo Luciani from the European Commission DG REGIO, who follows the EUSALP strategy and will present a little bit the overview of the Commission. Giacomo, we see a few blocks over the slides. I don't know if that can be...
It's better, Stefano?
Yes, we still see them, but we see the presentation.
Maybe I try, maybe it's the, voila, now?
No, oh, yeah. Okay,
it's better. Okay,
yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you, good morning to everybody. Just to say very, very briefly, thank also from my side, of course, the Italian Presidency, the technical superstructure for the invitation, the organization of this important workshop. You can imagine from the Commission side how also important it is. And just to say also that it's very difficult to add something very interesting after the very good overview from the Italian Presidency. What I will try to do in my presentation is maybe to focus on some elements along three key messages. The first one is something I would like still today to use the opportunity to highlight. And is this one, that embedding is about making the best use of funds available and having a bigger impact. And now I will also take inspiration from the intervention of our Director General, Mr. Lemaitre, at an embedding workshop that has been organized in June, covering all the 4 macro-regional strategies, not only. What does it mean? This basically means the possibility to increase the scale of action and create critical mass in order to achieve the intended change. At the end, using a bit maybe more my personal word, but this was somehow anticipated by Mr. Doglia in his intervention. It's really very much, I see a change of mindset. It is about really, we have our resources, and to think since the beginning how I can use better even, or in a more efficient way, these resources to do anyway what I was wanted to do for my territory, but in coordination or cooperation with others in order to have a bigger impact. And also I wanted to reiterate with this message also something was somehow also anticipated already by Mr. Doglia. This effort is really a joint effort, and I can tell you after all my experience of my colleague in the European Commission during this negotiation process, really to thank everybody, I would say, because everybody also present today, managing authorities, intermediary bodies, implementer of the strategies, play a role, and I would even say when we speak about embedding now, an embedding community. This is our embedding process. It is really a community working together, and if we continue like this, I think for sure the process will be successful, and we have already good signals, and I will tell you why. Because as also again a bit anticipated by Mr. Doglia, in the 21-27 period, there is really a solid legal and policy basis. And here I would focus, Mr. Doglia was saying now how in particular the main legal basis for the embedding process in the Common Provision Regulation has been strengthened in 21-27. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just you can see from this slide a bit a comparison between the key article of 1420 and 21-27. As you see, the wording is stronger, but also there is a part that is particularly strengthened and goes even beyond the macro-regional strategy. The the interregional and transnational action will beneficially locate at least one other member state. And here also I use the opportunity to, as you can see, this is the last bullet point in the right side of the slide, where it is indicated or outside the union where relevant. Just to this, we clarified also a lot during our negotiation. Of course, this where relevant is related to when there is cooperation outside the union. So just also this shows a further strengthening of the wording, also compared cooperation even beyond the macro-regional strategy. And I wanted to underline this because, of course, the two aspects are very interconnected and even strengthen each other. But then I know that you know, it's difficult in a nutshell. I know there will be a lot of good example afterwards, but how this is reflected for the information we have until now, from the adopted program until now. And they speak in here in particular a focus on the national and regional program of the cohesion policy. Mr. Doglia spoke, of course, about the importance also of the Interreg program, other programs, but here I would like to focus here just to give you an idea really in a nutshell. We have really rather detailed contribution to the embedding process related activities in some program, of course, with mentioning in particular for EUSALP the financial dialogue network specifically, for example. Then we have another level, which is a bit, let's say, more general, let's say, but still very solid basis for action afterwards, contribution to specific EUSALP related actions, sometimes really with even very concrete activities mentioned, contributed to this action. And of course, in some cases for some specific objective, because this is, of course, is an obligation for each specific objective. But as we know, it's clear that not all the specific objective of the program as relevant in relation to the macro-regional strategies. So there is also a general contribution to EUSALP. So different level, but still very good entry point, very good basis for the implementation activities. Then again, in a nutshell, I wanted to mention another kind of program that again mentioned by Mr. Doglia, and I know are also relevant for this, some of the financial dialogue networks, so the direct managed fund. And I wanted to use the example of the LIFE program, although of course the topic of the LIFE can be relevant maybe for some of the financial dialogue, maybe not for all, at least in the same prominent way, but because there is probably one of the examples we have more evidence of the references to macro-regional strategies in the work program. There, the work programs encourage even the use of the macro-regional strategy for strategic integrated projects at transnational scale and for the coordinated implementation of strategic network project. Just very briefly, the strategic integrated projects are, I think, very interesting also for EUSALP, and I know there are also ideas in this regard from some action group. Because they are really about implementation of big environment, climate plan strategies program, and they require, as an obligation, the mobilization of additional EU funding sources. So they go very much in the spirit of the strategies, combination, complementarity between different funds. The strategic network projects are more specific, but again, they are about, mainstreaming of nature environment objectives in other policy and programs. So again, really following the spirit of the strategies. So this is just as an example. Then my last key message is that the good thing is that there are examples from other macro-regional strategies. We will see them, some of them afterwards. And also, as again, Mr. Doglia anticipated, the breeding process in EUSALP is well established. Very briefly, for the example, I try to be here very pragmatic, let's put it this way, as you will hear more in detail of some of these afterwards. Just to remind you about this webinar I mentioned before of 30 June. Here in the slide, you have here the you have the link to all the information to the webinar, which was organized by together with Interact, and I think would be really a valuable source of information for example from other macro-regional strategies. By the way, also the financial dialogue network being presented there for EUSALP at this webinar. Then coming from a bit the history, so I recap a bit. So these are some of the milestones of the EUSALP embedding process, because other also important initiatives have been taken place. But there was a first embedding workshop at the first macro strategy week in 2020, where there were presentation of direct management funds and the first exchange with cohesion policy nation region interreg managing authorities. Then we had a second EUSALP embedding workshop at the second macro strategy week 21, where there were actually the official creation of the financial dialogue network, the formal creation. And then, as was mentioned by Emma, the financial dialogue network workshop at the third macro strategy week in 2022, which was really about sharing of experience in order to take the EUSALP embedding process one step further. Of course, this workshop all organized with the different presidencies, French presidency before, Italian presidency with Interact. So again, big joint effort. So just to show you that voila, there is a solid basis also there in terms of process. And I would stop here also because I tell you I'm as eager as you to hear the speeches after me and the discussion at the working group. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Giacomo, for the good insight and the overview of what has already been done actually on the topic of embedding within the EUSALP strategy. And I will move on to the keynote speakers and talking about other macro-regional strategies and Interact specifically, which supports the cross macro-regional strategies fertilization, let's say. I will pass on the word to Ilze, who will present a little bit their outline of the topic of embedding. So please, Ilze.
Good morning. A little technical hiccup on my side. Yes, good morning also from my side. Thanks for this invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here today and also share some of learnings we have observed in Interact when working across all 4 macro regions. Each macro region, of course, having its own specificity because of the regional needs you address. However, there is one characteristic that all regions share, and this is a work for a long-term change, be it building a resilient alpine region or water quality as illustrated on this slide. This is done by streamlining processes across sectors and bringing together various institutions, initiatives, projects, and fundings. So in this way, this picture helps to show, to make sense a bit of the forest Mr. Doglia mentioned in his speech. So by bringing different policy initiatives, different institutions together, macro regions work for these challenges for improved situation in the region. And as Giacomo already mentioned, macro regions not only show where joint investments are needed, but also help funding programs to amplify their investments. So through better coordination, by providing space to build activities, investments, and processes that people in the region can jointly use. So we can see also in this illustration the biggest strengths embedding brings. So pooling resources, helping coordinated initiatives, all of the points Giacomo also stressed in his presentation just now. However, since the programming process is nearly closed, we don't have to talk only about theoretical possibilities, but we can already discuss potentials for cooperation by focusing on specific planned actions and funding priorities. When preparing for this workshop, I looked at the few regional programs focusing on the topics of today's meeting. These are the main keywords I found. As you can see, actions focusing on digitalization, services, innovation, energy, including also hydrogen, mobility, are quite prominent and shared in the region. You can also find EUSALP mentioned, Alpine territory, and this could be partially because of the embedding process and because of the regulation that was pushing forward the cooperation initiatives. So there is already a good basis to build the cooperation. Of course, if we would add more programs, we might have different accents. However, I believe we would find the majority of these words in other programs as well, as they are very much built in regional needs. So you could relate also in your own programs to these keywords. But when looking closer, what is behind these keywords, we can find such elements as, for example, recognition that cooperation is an essential element in building efficient and effective regional innovation ecosystems. So that's one of the activities that comes out throughout the programs I looked at. Also developing interoperable digital systems, also stressing this importance of seeing digital services, digital solutions across regions, across borders. So interoperability of digital solutions was an activity that could be highlighted here. Programs also mention cybersecurity, digital solutions for tourism, approaches to accessibility of services of general interest, all of which can benefit from local regional solutions. So again, different keywords. Traditionally, of course, we have a lot of activities linked to innovation cooperation, building innovation clusters, also cooperation between innovation clusters, pooling of equipment, joint research, development of innovation activities, also going beyond own borders, strengthening cooperation between these research institutions, strengthening research infrastructure, joint use of infrastructure, developing pilot projects in areas of smart specialization in order to scale up innovation and create common value chains in the region, just to mention a few. So see, there's already quite a list of activities that could potentially lead to specific cooperation activities. But to conclude the list of examples, let me also mention actions working on sustainable mobility solutions, taking into account user habits. So user habits were very much strengthened in the programs as well, among others by fully using the potentials of digitalization, creating and or upgrading traffic management platforms, working on interlinked pass systems, ticketing systems, you name it. Also electrical mobility, which would require, for example, compatible charging systems across Alpine region. And of course, the work on alternative fuels, highlighting hydrogen. You see it also here in this slide, which was automatically generated from the operational programs. So hydrogen is also highlighted. This includes various activities like science exchange, activities related to hydrogen production, storage, distribution, and deployment capacities, but also including local strategies. So there is, again, a number of activities. As you can see already, a quick read through the programs has brought out several topics and actions that can reach the planned impact only through cooperation beyond own region borders or in a wider EUSALP context. It goes very much to what Giacomo mentioned, that this cooperation helps to amplify the investment. So if we want to reach our ambition set in the operational programs, cooperation in the Alpine region can help it. But cooperation does not happen on its own. This we have seen over and over. It requires support, it requires resources. We heard embedding as a difficult process, but it's mostly because there is a need for coordination and cooperation support. And here, financial dialogues can be instrumental, and they are instrumental. So this is something you will hear more in the second part of the workshop, discussing in practical terms how the networks can help to pull together all of these individual activities for greater impact. Well, after this longer introduction, let me quickly reflect on the embedding practices applied in the period 2014-2020. As you can see on this slide, they used embedding practices varied in terms of intensity, but I will not go through all of them today. You have this slide, you will also get the links to various initiatives so you can follow up on them. And we are available for any questions, and you can reach out to Interact or Giacomo, and we'll help you as we can. But for this purpose of the presentation, I wanted to look at 3 different ways how transnational cooperation was supported in the period 2014-2020, allowing partners to build cooperations beyond their borders. First of all, we had specific calls dedicated to partnerships, to building transnational partnerships. This was, for example, done in Basilicata region in Italy. You will find the link to the call in the presentation, so you can have a look at the slide also and read how they organized the partnerships, how the eligibility was set, and so on. So that was the first point I wanted to highlight. Second, along with the specific call, we also saw in 2014-2020 period a solution that was giving already approved projects, so projects that were already set up and running for half a year, to apply for additional funding, to look for partners or to build partnerships in a wider macro-regional context. This was done in the this was included in the Swedish operational program. So again, a solution that's possible. So for running projects, adding a possibility to apply for additional fundings for transnational cooperation. As the third example, I would like to highlight so-called coordination calls. So coordination calls basically means one application deadline, sometimes also involving joint application form, but the selection, partner eligibility, reporting is based on participating region rules. We will hear a similar approach later in the afternoon as well, not the afternoon, but later in the event. We'll have a specific call experience running coordinated calls. But for this presentation, I picked up a science exchange, multilateral science exchange, jointly organized by Austria, Czech Republic, Serbia, Slovak Republic, and France. So the call was run based on bilateral cooperation agreements between these regions and simulating science exchange or transfer of technological cooperation. And in this particular case, proposals had to be submitted to all responsible national funding bodies of the participating regions at the same time. So they didn't have a specific joint application, but one shared deadline. And each partner had to apply simultaneously to their funding authorities. Otherwise, the project was not considered, or the compilation of partnership was not considered eligible. Yes, and then the proposal was assessed firstly nationally. So again, national rules apply. You don't need, in that case, shared rules on eligibility or something. You just bring in your own existing rules and assess partners accordingly. And then once national assessment was done, there was an exchange. Shortlisted projects were jointly discussed by all involved regions or national authorities in this case, and a joint decision was made. But then again, implementation reporting was done based on national regional rules. Well, I picked up this particular example also to highlight the fact that embedding is not only about EU funding. This is also a perception we have heard sometimes, that embedding is only something that applies to mainstream programs, sometimes also direct management programs. But this is not the case. Embedding is actually pulling resources, whatever resources are needed to achieve this long-term change, which is defined by and agreed by politicians or regions working together under the umbrella of macro region. So that was very quickly, but before I close and leave a floor to other speakers, let me finish by pointing to two questions that we see as a concern when we work with all 4 macro regions. And this could be something that could support your work on financial dialogue methodology, for example. Namely, the question is always, how do we link various regional initiatives to macro-regional work? How do we learn about these regional initiatives, and who holds the overview? Because if the more regions are involved, the more complex this picture becomes. So how do we do it in most efficient way? And in addition to financial dialogues, there is another question you can discuss with managing authorities, for example, if there is a need for a meeting space also to discuss operational activities. But yeah, that's all from my side as an introduction. You see all the keywords, everything is there, and then good luck to the discussions.
Thanks a lot, Ilze, and thanks to Interact for your work and your support as well. I will actually shift a little bit the order of the speakers, and I will move on directly to the one that was supposed to be the third speaker from the keynote session. So I would move on to Robert Lichtner from the Danube Region Strategy Point. He's the coordinator of the structure. Then we will go to Judith directly, and finally we will have an overview of what the EUSALP technical support structure will carry out within the framework of EUSALPs. So I would pass on the word to Robert, please.
Thank you very much, Stefano, and good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for the invitation and also for the opportunity to learn from each other and also to see how we can benefit from cooperation across macro-regional strategies. And while I'll open the presentation, and I hope that it's going to work, I would like to congratulate you on this really excellent work that has been done, that I have just seen through the presentation that have come up. And you will see also in my slides that we have been working along in a very similar manner, although having in mind that every strategy is completely different. But the tools and the processes that we have been following are very much similar for all strategies. So let me start with pointing out three things that we have seen in the Danube region that have turned out to be the most important learnings on how not only the embedding works, but also the implementation of the strategy, which was then also applied to the embedding process itself. So to start up with just simply dropping three keywords: cooperation, ownership, and trust, and coordination. So this is something that also our presidencies have seen and also followed up as one of the most important approaches. So needless to say, the same in the Danube region and also in other macro-regional strategies, we are working together across borders, across national interest, supranational, national, regional, and local interest. So this is the common sense and the work that while we are meeting and while we are implementing macro-regional strategies. What is more important in this sense is the political commitment. Also needless to say that if you do not have commitment by the states, by the owners of the strategies, you will not be able to perform in a way that was laid down in an action plan, and also laid down in the stakeholders that have decided and agreed upon this. This, of course, means that ownership and trust among the stakeholders, among the countries, needs to be in place. And of course, if we work together, and if we look now focus on the topic of embedding, we need to carry out all these actions in a very coordinated way. Otherwise, we will end up with many things happening in a very uncoordinated way, and all the efforts will have much less impact than if we do it all together. For those of you not very much acquainted with the Danube region, I know they're really quick on this. We have in the Danube region 12 priority areas, 12 thematic areas, very similar as you have it in the Alpine region, divided among 4 pillars. and all the actions that are being carried out and implemented are set up in the action plan, which was revised the last time in 2020, where we already in the Danube region were in a very lucky position that we were able to start the embedding process, or to continue the embedding process again. As we already heard, embedding is nothing new for the macro-regional strategies. So back then we were able to start the embedding process together with the revision of the action plan. So among these 12 pillars, 12 priority areas in the Danube, we also, all of us, all macro-regional strategies have been dealing with topics like the Green Deal, digital transition, climate change, needless to say, the war in Ukraine, energy transition, etc., etc. So all these topics are very cross-cutting and are very horizontal character. So also here, the embedding is also a very good tool to approach and to tackle these things within this whole process. So as I said, in the Danube, we have tried, and this is something which we have seen as a very positive outcome, is that the political ownership and the leadership throughout this process has been carried out by the presidencies. So we have started with this, with the Croatian presidency. Back then we had a Slovak presidency, Ukrainian presidency just finished their presidency last week, and we will be carrying on the embedding process and the embedding exercise with the incoming Slovenian presidency. So it is also important to have this cooperation among the trio presidencies, so that the actions and the work that has been done will be carried out by each following presidency. And this is something, again, of the political ownership, which is very, very important. We have also seen that this thematic focus and the cross-cutting approach is also something which becomes more important in the next period and in this upcoming financial period than we had the experience in the past in Danube region. So to have a very strong focus on the thematic coordination. So in the Danube, the PACS priority area coordinators. In the Alpine strategy, you have the action group leaders. So to have a very strong involvement of the thematic experts and them being the driving force of the embedding exercise. The next one, which we have worked quite a lot on, was the coordination and alignment of the activities. So to set up a process-driven approach and also definition of roles and responsibilities. So this is something that also our presidencies have taken up. Every presidency in the Danube, for usual, has a governance paper or an embedding paper, as they call it, where they basically outline their approach to the embedding, taking up the experience from the previous presidency and taking up the next steps here. And also here, clearly defining the roles and responsibilities of all the stakeholders and actors within the strategy. The inclusive approach and the stakeholder focus groups, again, national coordinators, thematic coordinators, steering groups, managing authorities, programs, European Commission, etc., etc. So every stakeholder group needs to have a place in this embedding process. What we also looked at was to provide all the stakeholders with concrete tools for implementation, be it the managing authorities networks, as you already also have them, screening of funding, provision of flagships, etc., etc. So also to have within this process a very concrete tools that can be used by the various stakeholder groups. And last but not least, also when we're discussing about the outcomes, so what becomes more and more important is to set up a monitoring of this embedding process. So to see what happened throughout all our efforts that we have been working for many months and years, to at the end of the day, see what the real impact of the programming phase and within the implementation phase will be in the future. In the Danube, and I can be really quick here, as I said, we started back in 2020, where we basically, with the revision of the action plan, had a look at the actions from the action plan and made a screening with all the programs that were relevant for the Danube region strategy. So basically the alignment on the paper happened throughout 2020, where we compared the strategy, the actions from the action plan with the programs, setting up the ground for further steps. So this was the step one. In the second step, we have taken up with several tools provided, and you also have on every screen a link where you can download, when you can click the link and also download and see all the tools that have been provided. And I don't want to overburden this presentation here, so you can get all the information under those links. So after the screening and after the involvement of all stakeholders, we have taken up the work towards the managing or programming authorities networks. As you know, we not only have EU member states, we also have non-EU member states. So there we also have different kind of authorities that work with the programs. And we have 3 managing authorities networks: the ESF, that's the oldest one, that's been working since 2015. And we have another 2 managing authorities networks for ERDF-CF and IPA-NDICI for the non-EU countries. So here we have brought up together the priority area coordinators together with the programs, and where we tried to focus on the needs of the program. So to understand how the programs perform, what the programs need from the strategy, and vice versa. So basically, we have been using these networks as a dialogues to provide these links and this translation from the strategy, from the actions towards the financing, towards the programs and managing authorities. The next step was what we call the embedding dialogues or embedding weeks. So basically, according to the screening, we did something that Ilze also did before, simply counted the top topics that come up according to the programs and come up according to the priority areas, and those who have the most counts we have taken up for the next steps to get more concrete into the implementation phase. Again, in the Danube, we have 85 actions, so it would not be possible to perform the embedding exercise with all the 85 actions. So we had to streamline and we had to focus on those that have basically the most counts. And we have also, since 2022, then Danube strategy flagships, but I will come up to these in a second. So this is one tool that has proven to be very useful in bringing the managing authorities and the programs together with the thematic coordinators, so the experts, the drivers that are implementing the strategy. We have called it the Embedding Week. You can also call this financial dialogues. The name is not important, it's about the content. So we have, again, according to these top 5 topics that we have taken up, we have performed a week of embedding, where we have invited all the needed stakeholders, all the involved stakeholders, thematic coordinators, programs. And by saying programs, we have included also in the managing authorities networks, the national regional programs, transnational programs, of course, cross-border programs, but also centrally managed programs. So to have as wide as possible range of programs present within these networks, and we have had them in a very open manner. So basically everyone is welcome to join at any time for the meetings and kind of try to focus this on a very thematic approach. And the next tool that I would like to introduce to you, that we have been using since a short time, it is also one of the outcomes of the whole embedding exercise, is the Danube strategy flagships. So we have tried here, and this is also something that was very much performed and supported by the presidency, to have this clear political input on this, to have projects and or processes, because I'm pretty sure you have the same discussion in the Alpine region between projects and process focus. We have established this for both. So both can be a flagship that contributes to the implementation of the EUSDR, having a clear macro-regional dimension and a multi-level governance approach. So here we have tried to have a common denominator, to have this denominator in a very, very low income part. So to provide the priority area coordinators, thematic coordinators, enough room for nominating Danube strategy flagships. We also use these flagships now to strengthen the internal and external communication, and also to provide a good visibility for the implementation of the Danube region strategy. You can see all those projects under that link, so you can click them. And we have also, again, all these processes and projects were nominated by the thematic area coordinators. So they do not come up by the national coordinators. They were chosen in a very extensive process by the thematic coordinators, because they are those who will be and have been working with them throughout also the next period. So they were also consulting their steering groups, so getting as much information and participation within this process from the priority areas. And also to show you, this is the first outcome. So the concept has it that we have it for 1 year. So the whole strategy nominates 1 to 3 such strategic flagships for the whole strategy. For this year, we have 27 of them. And also to show you what they look like, I have picked up 5 examples. And here I would like to also point out the importance and the necessity, I think, for the future of mutual cooperation beyond the macro regions itself, so across macro-regional approach. If you look at the first one, enhancing hydrogen economy in the EUSDR, so this is something that you have been working a lot, and what we have seen is that you are much ahead of the Danube region here, and our colleagues from the PA2 have already established good contacts with your EUSALP Action Group 2, and also this is part of the Danube region flagship. So also here, this is on how possibly and in the future a better coordination and cooperation among the macro-regional strategies. So the learning from your experience, our experience, could be taken up on the next level. Another one, the Western Balkans RNI Information Hub. This is something, again, very specific and important for the Danube region, with our clear focus on the Western Balkan countries now, since we have 5 non-EU countries. So this is also something maybe a bit more specific for the Danube region. But if we focus on the RNI, this is something that is important for the Danube. We also have the Danube Tech Valley Initiative. And this is especially important flagship, because what we have managed here is we have a joint action of 4 priority areas here. So this is also the approach of the cross priority area. So we have 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 4 of them got together and nominated this flagship, meaning that we are pooling resources and energy and efforts from 4 priority areas. Also an example, a nature-based solution for flood risk reduction, something that is very common for the whole Danube region. Or if we look at the Danube region multimodal corridors, which is something not only specific for the Danube region, but for the whole Europe. So this is how the flagships in the Danube region do work. And needless to say, every strategy has different approaches. For example, in the Danube, we have a slight different approach and concept, for example, like the EUSBSR has, but the processes and the worker is very similar throughout all the strategies. The next topic that we have been working on and will also remain with us is the question of monitoring. So how to see and how to tell of how our efforts actually paid off. And we heard it at the beginning from Mr. Doglia that we do have the programming and implementation phase. Also, Ilze was referring to this. We are now at the end of the programming phase. So everything that was done up until now was in a very, let's say, theoretical approach, in a programming approach, but now we are moving towards the real work. And the real work is now up to the programs, managing authorities, and also up to you, thematic coordinators, who will be performing the work here. Our role also as DSP was throughout this process to set up a monitoring tool that we have been using, and we have this tool 2 parts. There is the tool, monitoring tool of the implementation of the strategy, and it's also now will be aligned with the monitoring of the embedding. So we are using within this digital online tool that is accessible for all the stakeholders. When we are scanning the calls with EUSDR relevance, you know, probably the Euro Access tool. So we are directly using this tool to provide the thematic coordinators and all the access here with the calls that are aligned with the EUSDR. We will be monitoring the implementation and the embedding via the PAC reporting tool, so the tool that the PACs, our thematic coordinators, have been using, and also throughout the managing authorities networks, here jointly working with the managing authorities networks and their authorities, so getting the information whether they are using extra points, macro-regional relevance, labeling of project, etc., you name it, you know, all the tools that have been using. So this is the part on the monitoring. And with my last slide, also to give you a really short outlook where we'll be working in the next months and years on the embedding topic is, again, as I said, the political approach here being high on the agenda. With the incoming Slovenian presidency, we do know that the Slovenian presidency will be having embedding as one of their top priorities as well. We will be continuing with the embedding week or the financial dialogue in 2023, continuation of the flagships, and also the presidency will be focusing on a closer cooperation with other macro-regional strategies, be it on a thematic level or via, for example, the EMRS presidencies. And also the monitoring is something that will stay with us. So at this stage, I would stop. I hope I was not too long. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And it was a really good presentation. And I think the idea that the Slovenian presidency will focus also on promoting collaboration across macro-regional strategies is really relevant, because I think from the EUSALP strategy, we have a lot to uptake from what you have been carrying out in the Danube region. And the fact that Slovenia is also sitting in both strategies is really relevant for us and could help us also in this process. I would now move onto a concrete case of synchronized calls, the Innovation Express. And I already apologize, Judith, for my pronunciation of your surname, because it's kind of hostile for me. But I will leave on the floor to Judith Sensi from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Labor and Tourism of Baden-Württemberg. So please, Judith, feel free to share the screen.
Thank you very much, Stefano. It was perfect, really. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you today, and that I have the possibility to share our experiences on Innovation Express with you. I prepared a short presentation. I will share my screen. I hope you can see it now.
Yes. Yes, we can.
Just a second. Okay, fine. What is Innovation Express? Probably some of you already heard about this initiative. Basically, we began with this initiative early 2020 when the crisis with COVID started. I remember that it was the course of 2020 when Interact invited us to a workshop. It was a workshop for all macro-regional strategies, where we tried to figure out how we could help our partners within our strategies to handle this difficult situation what we were facing during the COVID crisis, especially at the beginning when the lockdown came and the small and medium enterprises were facing huge problems. And at that time, with my colleague Anders Beckström from the Baltic Sea Strategy, and with the support of Ilze from Interact, we started to think about a kind of synchronized call, which could be used not only in the Danube and in the Baltic strategy, but also in other macro-regional strategies. And basically, we had not a difficult job because they were already good experiences in this direction, and we tried to build on the experiences of the Baltic Sea because they already had a kind of synchronized call, which was called BSR Stars Innovation Express program, and which ended 2017. Fortunately, some of our colleagues were already participating in this initiative, so we invited these experts to tell us how does it work in practice. And some of our colleagues were quite skeptic because, of course, if you hear synchronized call, joint calls, you immediately think, well, I don't want to transfer my money abroad. This is for our applicants and not for the others. But in case of synchronized calls, it is completely different. Your sources are staying in your region, in your own region. You do not have to transfer money abroad. You only finance your own partners, but there will be a trans-regional or cross-regional cooperation at the end, which you finance. How does it work? I mean, we are using or we are building within this Innovation Express program only on existing funding, so you do not need additional funds. Of course, you can put additional funds as well into the call if you wish, but basically we were working with existing funds, and everything was decided jointly by the participating regions. They could decide whether they use national sources, regional sources, or EU sources even. This is absolutely not a problem, because these programs are all flexible enough to participate or to be able to participate at the synchronized call. The application, so it was really a complete simple procedure. The applications were submitted by each partner to the funding partners in his own country and region. So it was quite simple. However, you may ask yourself, but how is it possible if, for example, we really would like to establish or to start on a certain topic synchronized call? Well, what we did was, first of all, we had to identify joint topics. We invited all the managing authorities from our regions, from our countries, and we tried to identify what kind of problems do SMEs facing at that moment. So, and it was basically problems with, we had huge problems, for example, with digitalization. It was a must at that time, and therefore it was clear for all of us, we have to focus ourselves on the topic of digitalization, and of course some additional topics as well. And then we had to check with the managing authorities, of course, only with those who were interested to participate. Okay, when are you planning such calls? For example, calls for supporting SMEs regarding digitalization. And then we figured out that we are in a very difficult situation because it was middle of 2020 or almost end of 2020. And of course, the programs were running out of money, especially the EU funded programs. So we figured out that probably we have only regional sources left. But this was not a problem. We immediately recognized that a lot of countries, especially Southeastern countries, were out because they do not really have regional sources, but they were very much interested. So they stayed on board like kind of observer, and we decided to go on, to move on with only regions who have regional sources. And we will start a kind of pilot call just to see how it works. And well, the next step was when we had the interested countries to screen, let's say, the call schedules when they are planning to launch their calls. It was not an easy exercise because, of course, some regions wanted to launch a call immediately, end of 2020. Some of them were planned to launch the call only in spring. But at the end, we managed to agree with 4 regions to start the call in spring 2021. And it was the only important thing to launch the call at the same time. but some of the calls were open a little bit longer, some of the calls closed at the same time. So it was basically not a big deal. Then finally, we also had to agree, of course, on the final scope of the call. This is what I will show you on the next slide. And we also had to agree who is doing what. And this is always a crucial question, because most of the managing authorities probably have capacity problems, and they can focus only on their own task, and they will say, no, I'm sorry, I have no capacities for doing additional jobs, for example, coordinating a synchronized call. But I can assure you it was not a difficult exercise. Basically, the call documentation, let's call it call documentation, was very simple. So we prepared a 2-pager, which was really summarizing all the important information on the call. What is the aim of the call, how you can participate. But the call documentation in each and every region was completely different. And each and every region used its own language. So we had only really a 2-pager in English, which described how partners can cooperate. And the procedure was really roughly described, and that's it. So basically it was not a big deal. On the other hand, we also had to, of course, agree how we will launch this call. We agreed to rent, let's say, a website, a matchmaking website, where we could match our partners. We could put all the relevant information on the call. For example, the partners could see who are the contact partners or the contact persons in each region if they are interested to participate at this call. And also they could download the national or the regional application packages from this website. And then you will ask yourself, okay, but how much did you pay for this? Because this is, of course, always another question, not only the lack of human capacities. Well, basically, we paid not too much, approximately, let me lie, I think around 4,000 euro what we paid for all this. And we were in a lucky situation because of course, the Danube Region strategy was financing our activities within the priority area 8 at that time. So we could easily do this. And also we had a project from the Alpine Space Program, which was focusing exactly on synchronized calls. And this was great because these colleagues helped us within the frame of this Interact project a little bit to coordinate the activities. But I mean, all the regions, you anyway need to include all the regions in this work. So for example, when formulating this paper, all regions have to check this document. So, but I think it was really not that complicated. So that was the kind of preparation of the core documentation. And then finally, we launched the call. And then at the end, what we had was a final meeting. When all the regional calls were closed, we decided to meet each other once again in fall 2021. And then we decided we informed each other which project was received the support. And then we checked once again which project tried to cooperate with another partner from another region. And we listed then at the end these projects. So this was basically the work, what we had with this call. I mean, it took almost 1 year, starting the preparations and closing the call, but please take into consideration this was really the first thing what we did, and we did our job, and this was a kind of add-on for everybody. So that's why it took a little bit longer. So 4 regions participated, as I mentioned at the beginning. At the end of this call, Salzburg, Brandenburg, Baden-Württemberg, and Canton Fribourg. As you can see, some Alpine regions, however, Baden-Württemberg and Salzburg are also participating in the Danube region strategy, and Brandenburg, who was already participated at the Baltic Sea program several years ago. So they were kind of experts. The scope of the call was artificial intelligence in life science applications and digital solutions for a sustainable industry. These were the two topics which were covered by each region's call. So it was quite easy to define. Who could participate? Basically, these calls were addressing clusters, small and medium enterprises, research organizations, intermediaries. We also had, for example, one startup from Baden-Württemberg who applied. And the time frame was quite tight. We had the call 2 months open. And we also organized a kind of matchmaking info day in the middle of the call. And I can tell you it was quite successful. You have to imagine it like not that like thousands of applicants were coming and were interested, because of course for a lot of SMEs and research organizations, it's an additional work if they have to cooperate transnational or interregional, but we had really a lot of interested applicants, and at the end we received very good project proposals as well. You may ask yourself what kind of actions we supported. Of course, research development, market research, but these were all listed in the regional calls. And if you allow me, I can give you also an example. For example, for a concrete project which was supported, there was, for example, this startup what I mentioned in Baden-Württemberg, and they started to cooperate with partners from Austria. A partner consortium in Austria applied also for funding. It was a research institution, and I think another university was also participating. And just to show you the differences, in Baden-Württemberg, the startup applied for approximately 70,000 euro. And on the other hand, in Austria, the consortium applied for approximately 2 million euro. But it was not a problem. They could cooperate, because for the startup, it was important to receive data for his development, software developments. And for the research institution, was very important to have these technical guys on board to support them with their tools, what they are developing. And also there was a difference between the project duration. In Baden-Württemberg, the startup had only 1 year to implement its activities. And in Austria, the project ran longer, approximately 2 years or 2 or 3 years. I don't remember exactly, but it was not a problem, because the startup had the possibility, even when he finished his activities in Baden-Württemberg, to continue to work with the project partners in Austria. So this was a really great exercise, and I think all the partners who were participating at this pilot call were satisfied at the end. So I can just really encourage you to try it. It's really quite easy, and if you need support in this respect, then just contact us. We can show you how it works. We can show you the project documentation or the call documentation, and to show you that it is quite easy. Yeah. So that's it from my side. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the presentation, and also for highlighting the problems that you had when first setting up this exercise, let's say. Which was successful. So I hope it will be uptaken by more regions, and especially, of course, focusing on the EUSALP region within our macro-regional strategy territory. So I will move on. I see we're a little bit late. I would move on to the last speaker of the keynote session before going into the parallel working groups. So I give the floor to Laurent Solier, who is the manager of the EUSALP Technical Secretariat. So please, Laurent, if you... Okay. You have to open your microphone.
Sorry. Hello to everyone. Could you see my screen now?
Yes, I can hear, but a bit low. So if you can, I don't know, move closer to them.
Okay. hello to everyone. So, as a new person in the EUSAP family, I'm learning a lot from the previous presentation. So, thank you, and will certainly from the discussion during the event. Secondly, I would like to thank the 87 participants who have joined and listening to us. It's a lot. I think there is a peak of about 100 people participating to this event. So congratulations to all of you. I'm trying. All right. First of all, as I will, the best current, yes, identity to encompass the duty that will be performed by the appointed team is a technical secretariat role. And we are irrigating all these EUSALP bodies, so three type of bodies: decision bodies, advisory bodies, and implementation bodies. And basically the financial dialogue networks is an important part of our work, as you could see in these schemes. Technical Secretariat. So the key mandate of this permanent Technical Secretariat is to support the EU strategy for the Alpine region in all its components. So the Secretariat team will carry out the following services: supporting events and awareness raising on EUSALP activities, leveraging partnership opportunities and the drawing up of transnational projects, reporting actions and facilitating multi-stakeholders dialogue and embedding exercise, measuring impact and capitalizing reporting on results as well, ensuring optimal technical, administrative and financial coordination of a new project that it's called Support EUSALP Project. And that project is composed of 16 partners with an estimated preliminary budget of 4 million euros. And it's supported by the Alpine Space Program, but also by the project partners. And obviously organizing and managing the Secretariat team. The team is composed of six collaborators, one communication officer, one governance officer, and 3 policy officers. So embedding for us, and as you've seen on the first slide, is basically to facilitate the connection between the nine action groups, activities, and available funding opportunities, so that the previous speakers have explained what is embedding, so I don't really want to spend too much time on that. For the one which doesn't really know where or to situate the strategy for the Alpine region, you could see between the program, the Alpine Space Program, and the EUSALP, the boundaries of our strategy and the different. So it's composed of 48 regions, and it's located in 7 countries, including 5 EU member states and 2 non-EU countries. So basically it's in Germany, Austria, France, Italy, and Slovenia, and the 2 non-EU countries, Liechtenstein and Switzerland, with all the 26 cantons. So the first network, and it's was set up at the EUSALP Embedding Workshop. It was in March 2021, and basically 3 topics: network on energy transition, the hydrogen, and what was mentioned before, it is an important topic that is followed by la région Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. A network on sustainable mobility, and I've seen the representative of this network is with us, and it's shared by the Région Sud, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur. And the final one is Region Lombardia, which is in charge of digital technology. So in the upcoming month, what we will do, we will obviously establish a common working framework for the 3 existing financial dialogue networks, mapping of common priorities, identification of flagship initiatives, and of relevant funding sources. We will also, on step 3, identification of further financial dialogue networks and capacity building activities. And step 4, we will establish managing authorities and intermediary bodies network for the EUSALP strategy. So basically, it's a bit of a summary of all what was said this morning. As we are running a bit of time, I would like really to thank you and on your presentation, and also thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you a lot. Thanks, Laurent. And of course, being a recently instituted institution, sorry for the double wording, we have a lot of work to do and to carry out. So of course, everything that has been carried out within the EUSALP strategy so far was funded within other projects. But now that we have a secretariat, the idea is that we will support and facilitate all this process. And in the upcoming months, we have a lot of work to do, as you could see. So now I would move on to the parallel working group. So we will have 1 hour until 11:45 to discuss on the 3 different topics. So I think my colleagues will already divided the participants according to the preference they expressed when registering to the workshop. But of course, if you want to switch the working group, or if you have another preference, I think you are allowed to do that. So I think we can move on to the working sessions.
Sure about their choice. So we'll wait for them to choose the right session they want to be in, and then we'll start.